investigate a huge, hairy, really smelly monster.
The dense jungles of the Amazon are full of wild animals, some of them completely unknown to science.
We've been receiving reports about a terrifying Amazonian creature called the Mapinguari.
I go to Brazil to uncover the truth behind those stories.
And if the Mapinguari really exists, just what kind of creature is it? I investigate that part of the story.
A lot of people accuse me of having rocks in my head. But actually, I have bones on my brain. And I'm going to show you how you can preserve them just like museums do.
This is Mystery Hunters.
Is it possible that the Mapinguari is real? These Brazilian kids have heard the stories. What does the Mapinguari look like? She says the legend says it's very hairy. It has a big belly with a red mouth that bites the heads of its victims. He says it can kill people, and that's what makes people so afraid of the Mapinguari. What would you do if you came face to face with the Mapinguari? He says he's sure he would run away and wouldn't look back. Do you believe it's real or just a story? He says even though he's never seen it, he believes the stories people tell about seeing it. Those kids could be right. The Mapinguari could be real, but people who've seen the creature say it's not exactly like the statue the city made of it. Mario Pereira de Souza is one of at least 50 people who say they've come face to face with a Mapinguari. It happened while he was hunting deep in the Amazon rainforest. Can you describe the creature you saw?
Olha, Cristiano, o bicho era muito cabeludo.
He says the creature was very hairy, extremely stinky. It had a red mouth and a strange scream. Can you draw me a picture of what you saw?
Partiu para cima de mim. Eu atirei nele.
Mario says the creature came after him and he shot it.
Passei.
He says the smell from the creature was so bad he couldn't eat for days. And after that, he was so scared he wouldn't set foot in the jungle for 3 months.
The Mapinguari is beginning to sound like a cross between two other creatures we've investigated, Bigfoot and the skunk ape. I went looking for Bigfoot in the northwest of the United States. Eyewitnesses describe him as large and hairy, like the Mapinguari. And Christina went to Florida to investigate the skunk ape. The skunk ape got his name because he smells so bad, he makes you want to puke. And many eyewitnesses say exactly the same thing about the Mapinguari. Is it possible the three creatures are related? Or could it even be a case of the same animal living in 3 different places?
If the Mapinguari is a real animal, just what kind of beast am I looking for?
Well, I just might have the answer to that question.
Did you know the Giants... Ugh. There's a fly in my ice cube. Ugh. And an ice cube in my fly. Actually, this is perfect. Because I got an amazing email from 10-year-old Yoni Barr of Solon, Ohio, USA, about a much bigger animal in a much bigger ice cube. Take a look on the... What the... For crying out loud. Dear Doubting Dave, I heard that scientists are digging up woolly mammoths frozen in ice, then taking samples from the bodies and cloning them. Will woolly mammoths roam the earth again? Well, Yoni, you're right. Ooh. Scientists are searching for woolly mammoths frozen in Siberia and Alaska, where they once thrived until about 10,000 years ago when the species became extinct. It's also true that scientists have cloned animals. The first mammal to be cloned was a sheep named Dolly. But it took many, many tries before it actually worked. Have they cloned a woolly mammoth yet? No. Why? Because to clone something, you need some of its DNA. That is like a code in all of us that makes us the kind of animal we are. When Dolly was cloned, she was a living, breathing sheep, and her DNA was healthy. But the woolly mammoths are all long dead, and their DNA is old and broken down. That means scientists would have to find a fleshy part of a mammoth that got preserved in the ice before they could even think about cloning it. And so far, they haven't. So, Yoni, even though the technology for cloning exists, not now. It looks like the woolly mammoth, the dinosaurs, and maybe even the giant sloth are all going to have to stay extinct at least a little while longer. That is, if the giant sloth is extinct.
I'm in Brazil to investigate reports that this mythical creature, the Mapinguari, may not be a myth at all, but a real, live, breathing animal. But what kind of animal?
Maybe this kind. This is the skeleton of an extinct animal called the giant ground sloth, a huge creature that once roamed all over North and South America. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Araya. Let's take a closer look at the
Kevin
ground
Seymour
sloth.
is an investigator of prehistoric creatures. Can you tell me what the giant ground sloth looked like when it was alive?
We have some idea because we have the full skeleton preserved. We can see that it has claws on both its front and its hind feet. It probably could defend itself and certainly kill other animals if it had to. From preserved pieces of hide, we know that it was shaggy and reddish in color.
Well, how big was it?
We know from the skeleton it was almost as big as an elephant, but we can tell from the way the bones go together that this animal could stand on its hind legs and it would be a really scary thing.
Did it smell bad?
We don't really know, but we could guess that it did because other living sloths smell bad.
Is it possible that the Mapinguari is a giant ground sloth? Let's see. That's the giant ground sloth skeleton. And that's what he looked like when he was alive. And this is how people in Brazil describe the Mapinguari. Well, what do you think?
There's something else we can look at. There's a sloth that's alive in there. Only this guy isn't a giant. He's a tree sloth, a relative of the giant sloth. Look at his claws. On a giant sloth, they'd be huge, deadly. Niet Guidon has uncovered the bones of giant creatures in this area in northern Brazil.
I have something to show to you.
Are these the remains of a giant ground sloth?
Yes, we found here all the bones of this giant sloth. This is the skull and the upper arm and 2 claws.
How big would you say the sloth would have been?
By the size of the bones, we may think something like 4 or 5 meters high.
Wow, that's huge. Most scientists say the giant sloth doesn't exist because it's extinct. What do you think?
Well, here in the region, they are extinct. They lived here when the region was covered by the rainforest.
When giant sloths lived in this area, it was green. Niet says they wouldn't live here anymore, but in the rainforest, they might still exist.
Like, for instance, the Amazon. It's possible to find giant sloth. Why not?
And Ed brings me to a cave.
What do you think it is?
Well, these black paintings, some specialists think that they are the giant sloth, the representation of giant sloth.
It could kind of look like a giant sloth that has the pointy claws.
Yes, they are really very similar to giant sloths.
If this is a painting of a giant ground sloth, maybe the artist saw one.
Could it be recent?
Perhaps 5,000 years ago.
So this painting is evidence that as recent as 5,000 years ago, the giant sloth was alive in this area.
Mystery Hunters Weekend!
Some new heroes have arrived. They might not be very big, but small is powerful! Believe it! Meet the Savums. Hello! The tiny team of do-gooders who just love to help. No adventure is too big or too small. So get ready because the Savums are coming. Adventures with the Savums, weekdays at 9:30 and 11 on Discovery Kids.
Hi, Dionisio. How are you?
Eu vou bem, e você?
Dionisio Pimentel is a scientist who's been looking for the giant ground sloth for years.
Do you believe the giant ground sloth is extinct?
He says if the giant sloth is extinct, it's only recent. He says he personally believes that it still exists, and that's why he's part of a team that's still looking for that animal.
What evidence do you have that it could still be alive?
Vem que eu vou lhe mostrar.
He says he'll show me.
Essa, Cristina, é uma
This is the footprint of a giant sloth. It belongs to this museum.
que nós fizemos.
And Dionisio tells me he found one just like it, only a bit smaller, when he was in the Amazon
É
rainforest.
idêntico.
You can see the marks made by the sloth's massive claws.
Como fosse deixados as unhas, a parte.
So if the giant ground sloth didn't die out, it could be what people see when they report having a close encounter with a Mapinguari.
He says he believes so.
What makes you so sure you're on the trail of a living creature and not an ancient giant sloth like these 13,000-year-old bones?
Cristina, nós
He
fomos
says they
em
went to
vários
different
pontos,
regions in the
regiões
Amazon,
na Amazônia. E
and they
encontramos
met with hunters
caçadores
that talked
que
about
relatam
an unknown
a
creature.
existência de bicho desconhecido para eles.
How do they describe them?
Os relatos de várias regiões
He says the hunters they spoke with say it was a huge animal. When walking on its back feet, it was at least 2 meters tall. It gave off a terrible smell, had great big teeth, and it was covered in hair.
há partes.
How do they describe the smell?
He says it's a very strong mixture of rotting flesh and poo.
What about its voice? How do you know it sounds like that?
He says he's already heard it.
Pouco mais forte.
He says a bit louder.
Ok.
Have you ever found any fresh body parts or fur that you could confirm were from a giant sloth?
He says not yet.
But if hunters have shot these creatures, how come we don't have any physical evidence like that?
A explicação é simples.
Dionisio says anyone who shot one has been too scared to hang around afterwards. And besides, the smell that comes from it drives people away.
I want to go into the rainforest to check this out for myself. Will you take me?
Com certeza.
He says sure, but we have to prepare first, as it's a bit dangerous.
A gas mask?
He says it's in case we find one, because it stinks.
We also have to bring along insect repellent to ward off killer mosquitoes. A tranquilizer gun in case we encounter the beast. And my tent, because we're staying the night. This is it. I'm going to the Amazon rainforest to find out if the giant sloth is still alive and if it can be the source of the Mapinguari stories.
Vamos, Cristina.
Sure hope I'm doing the right thing.
Everything we know about extinct animals we've learned from fossils, of their bones, footprints, and poo. Most prehistoric skeletons you see in museums are not the creature's actual bones. They're models made from the creature's fossils. And I'm going to show you how you can do it too. And preserve some lucky skeleton forever. To make a model skeleton from a fossil, you'll need a fossil of your own. Lobster claws work great. Just kidding. Lobsters have been around for millions of years, and we found lots of fossils of their bodies. Most fossils happen when an animal dies. The body rots away and sinks to the bottom of a lake, swamp, or ocean. But the hard parts of the animal, like bones, shells, and teeth, remain buried under layers of mud and sand. Over thousands of years, minerals from the earth seep in, turning those leftover animal parts into rock. We call those fossils. A fossil is like a rock copy of the original animal part. But you can make your model with a modern-day claw. Push your claw into a piece of plasticine or modeling clay. And wait until it hardens. Once it's hard, pull out the claw. And voila! Now, museums would make a permanent model from their mold using materials like fiberglass, but you can try something a little more edible, like Jell-O. Mix Jell-O powder into water and pour it into your mold. Refrigerate it overnight until it's nice and hard. Take it out of the mold, and there you have it. A Jell-O claw made from actual skeletal remains, just like in a museum. Except for the Jell-O.
I've come deep into the Amazon rainforest to find out if the giant ground sloth is alive and if it's the source of the Mapinguari stories. Dionisio leads me deep into the rainforest.
Cristina, aqui é bom local para a gente armar a tenda.
We set up camp so we can stay overnight.
I wonder if the creature's really out here. I don't know if I'm gonna find the Mapinguari out here, but I do know this. I sure wouldn't want him to find me.
Right now, I'm kind of hoping it's extinct.
But what if the giant sloth is not extinct? It wouldn't be the first time a creature that was supposed to be extinct turned up alive and well. The coelacanth is an ancient fish that was thought to have disappeared from the oceans over 70 million years ago. This video proves it's still alive. Scientists visiting a remote region of Cambodia recently came across large numbers of Siamese crocodiles, a species that everybody thought was extinct. And the Chicoan peccary is a South American wild pig that most scientists thought was extinct too. The local people kept insisting that the Chicoan peccary was alive, but the scientists refused to believe them. They said it was only a story, just like the Mapinguari, until they found one alive in 1972.
Bom dia, Cristina. Você já tá pronta?
As I'll ever be. Let's go looking for the Mapinguari.
The Amazon rainforest is home to thousands of species of plants, birds, insects, and animals that scientists haven't studied and classified yet. Many of them don't even have names.
Realmente, a floresta amazônica...
Dionisio tells me that the Amazon rainforest is really dense, and a big animal could be hidden in here, and we wouldn't even notice. We see a lot of creatures, but nothing big. Dionisio uses a call he believes comes from the giant sloth. He says imagine that, but very strong. He says it makes you shake, even if you're not a coward. It's very powerful.
É muito forte.
Let me try.
Não, mais ou
He
menos
says
assim.
no. Try like this.
Muito forte, bem forte mesmo.
Hey, wait a minute. Isn't this some kind of animal poop?
Não, Cristina, isso é semente.
He says no, it's a seed.
Foi muito bom você ter visto.
He says it was good that I caught this because small things can be easily overlooked in the jungle. He says animal poo may help to identify the creature.
Grande porte ou pequeno porte.
With no solid evidence yet, like hair or poop, most scientists believe the giant ground sloth is extinct.
Is it possible the Mapinguari is a giant ground sloth?
I would say it is possible. However, we don't have any evidence that this kind of animal survived 10,000 years ago, so we have no fossils younger than 10,000 years old.
Well, I guess we didn't get lucky this time. So there's no scientific proof that the giant sloth exists. But if it does, it could easily be hiding in these wild and remote jungles of Brazil. Even if they did die out long ago, I'm pretty sure stories of the Mapinguari will never die. One thing about the Mapinguari seems certain. If it is real, it's probably the smelliest animal in the world.
No, you're wrong. The smelliest animal in the world is the zorilla.
You mean gorilla?
No. No, I mean the zorilla. Really, it's a small carnivorous member of the weasel family found in Africa. It can spritz out a fluid that can be smelled from half a mile away.
Seriously?
Yep. Matter of fact, I have a scratch and sniff picture of a zorilla right here. You can try this at home right now. Just give that a scratch and get ready for a really horrendous smell. Anything? Of course not. You can't scratch and sniff a TV screen. Remember, things aren't always what they seem.
Thanks for watching.